include you in the discussion, so if you have anything
Let
to
me
say
get you a
about
copy of
what we're
where
discussing,
we're at.
please do.
Sweet, I like it.
Um,
It was a little hard on the Zoom last time when you're editing text and I've got it going.
sure, yeah.
I wonder what they're
It's
talking about.
kind of hard even if you're here, actually. But, yeah,
So John, when David gets back,
yes,
I'd like to ask that he announce people that do come onto the Zoom,
sure.
because I really wasn't sure that he was.
I didn't know he was on until the end. Sure. I'm gonna wait for David to get back. Well, we can do the minutes. Anybody got minutes?
Oh, I think I have room, no changes.
That's what I mean. Any changes? Sounds like none?
I missed the last meeting.
Yeah, you were here, right.
Yes, it says right here, okay.
So I gotta ask a technical question to David about whether we have enough people to vote on the minutes.
Well, I mean, if you designate me,
Yeah, but were you, I don't know the answer,
Okay.
so I'll just ask him. Were you here you were?
I was here
Yeah.
last time.
So if
David was
it doesn't
not.
matter, then we can do it. All right.
So Rich, what's the event that you're having?
Oh, we're just having a Labor Day party.
Nice. I'm the roustabout wrangler.
You're the tenter. Thank you.
Go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is it gonna be obvious where you want it?
No,
Okay,
okay.
we'll figure it out.
I mean, I can
first of all-
maybe mark it out.
Can you, if there's anybody on Zoom, just let us know.
Yep, there is nobody,
Nobody on Zoom. And then I have a technical question for you, David,
okay.
David Robbins. Us three were all here last time, and with the three of us, it's enough to vote.
Yes.
It was discussion, so do we need members, or is it okay for us three to vote?
For the minutes, you can
Okay,
vote for the minutes,
So
because
I'd
that's
like-
not a case.
right,
The
okay.
only time you would have to,
Okay.
you know, the quorum is to hear a case,
Got
and
All right.
to accept the minutes will not be a problem.
All right, in that case, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as written. Is there a second? Rich, this is Rich Mengy, this is Rich Brown. Okay, all those in favor? It is unanimous, all those qualified to vote. Okay, so we might as well get right down to what we gotta do, which is the corrected solar system. I do have a number of questions and comments. Do other people?
I had a little fussy, this is on the First Amendment,
Right,
the wording, yes. I had a couple fussy things,
okay.
Yeah.
so,
You wanna go ahead?
sure. So David, looking at the wording you sent out, I would strike the abbreviation RSES in A,
Okay.
because I don't think we use it anyplace, it's not essential. In E, it looks like I typed that because I typed footprint.
Ah,
I always
Yeah.
type footprint. And then on page 2, Roman numeral 1, third line, it says if they modify the building footprint or height of the structure on which they are mounted, that wants a comma, the resulting structure. That's good.
okay.
That's
Sorry,
all.
Rich, where was that?
That was in, second page.
Excuse me.
I
Is that right?
just stick a comma after the word mounted.
Maggie?
No, I didn't have anything else other than, yeah, look at the.
All right.
ring.
All right, so I have a bunch, so
Okay.
bear with me. And a lot of them are questions. So in the first part where it defines solar energy system, we have capable of collecting, comma, distributing, and slash or. So, what are we saying here? So we're saying we have collecting, comma, distributing, which means it has to collect and distribute. Then it says and or storing, which takes storing, it puts it into a different category. Are we saying that, what I think it says is that means that the system can solely store, it doesn't have to collect or distribute? And is that what we want to say?
I think what the intent is, if you look at a lot of the systems nowadays, you have the system that collects, creates the energy, puts it into the grid, and it's gone. Other systems collect it, put it in a battery, and store it. But it's not a requirement of the system to have that. So by saying and/or storing, it's saying that the storage is an option
On its own?
on its own.
Okay, then that's what we mean, okay.
That was my understanding.
Is that what
of having-
everybody,
Yeah, we discussed,
Okay.
that was my recollection of
Okay.
the meeting.
great.
Would be nice to, is there a style manual, because an Oxford comma after distributing might be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the school of S.I. Hayakawa. His comma usage, and this gets into deep philosophical muddy waters, who would probably not recommend that, but I don't really care. I'm fine with it how it is. If people really want a comma there, they can have it.
Well, because it's like distributing and/or, you see, it pairs the storing with the distributing, and I think that they are three independent functions.
Okay, I mean, I'm fine with it. What do people have any feeling about that?
I'd be happy with the comment there.
Rich?
I'm fine with the comment.
Okay. Comment is in. Okay, so then I have, this is pretty fussy, but bear with me. So in B and C, I wanted to keep the language clear, as clear and consistent as possible. I'm happy if I'm shot down here, it's not like I need to be right, but I was thinking a solar energy system that is ground mounted with a cumulative footprint of 2,000 square feet or less. So that in the next one, we could say a solar energy system that is ground mounted with a cumulative footprint larger than 2,000 square feet, but less than 20,000 square feet. It just seems clearer, but if people like it the way it is, that's fine with me.
I think that your thing makes it clearer, actually.
Okay.
Bounded intervals are much clearer.
Okay, and then in B, my question is, we say cumulative footprint, and then we add the system may be composed of one or several sets of panels. Since we say cumulative, do we need that? Or maybe
So the
it just makes it
reason-
clearer.
The reason to say, I mean, I don't want it to be confusing, it's like, oh wait, I don't have enough room on one rack to get in all the panels I want, so I want a second rack.
Okay,
And I think that was
it's
intended.
stated, yeah, so
to
that makes
say
it clear.
2 racks.
Okay. Okay,
Which one were you asking the question on that?
on B, we,
Okay. Yeah.
for instance, in C, we don't say that.
Right.
And so, why
I
would we?
think here, that needs to be moved to a different location.
Right,
Maybe under the part of the solar energy system.
up in that opening definition?
Right, because that way,
Yeah, I think
that would,
that's,
assume that everything underneath that, adheres to those.
right.
Well, or couldn't we just repeat the same sentence that we had in B and?
We could do
consistent
that
and-
too.
that would make it clear that they were very parallel, and really the
Yeah.
only difference is the size.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine with me, David?
I'm just trying to.
No, I'm talking, this, I'm sorry.
I'm just looking at this sort of carefully, sort of, you know, a lawyer look at it. And I noted a couple things. One, we define solar energy system, but then we don't use that definition. We should probably incorporate it in all of these subpoints. So instead of saying, like in B, a solar energy system, we should probably say an SES.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean instead of the full word?
Yeah, otherwise, or we should take out the definition if we're not gonna use it.
Take out the abbreviation DSES.
Yeah, the defined term.
Oh, okay, so take that out at the top.
Either way, I don't care, but if you create a definition
Right.
like that, then you should use it.
So, is there any place where we use it?
Well, on D, we do.
Yeah, that's the same issue. Right, everywhere else it's spelled.
Yeah, but on D, you also say solar energy system or systems.
So it's, isn't that the same issue you're talking about, David?
Yeah, normally in a legal document, if you create a
You're
defined term.
gonna use it
then you-
elsewhere.
then
So
you
why don't we
use it.
strike that in both places?
Okay, so then you're just not defining it, you're just, well, you're
We're
defining it, but you're not
defining it,
creating
but
a
without,
defined term.
without the abbreviation.
And it's such an ugly abbreviation. I mean, it's-
Sure.
Okay,
It's not nearly as gracious as CPU or something.
all right, so we're gonna double,
I mean, it seems like we spent an awful lot of time developing this abbreviation. I feel kind of funny just dumping it. I mean, I
You know-
understand.
well, I think we're not gonna use it.
I worked hard not to include it when I rewrote this, and I forgot to strike it from the original.
Yeah, I think a lot of the discussion was about clarity, and there was some actually substantial discomfort, as I recall, about the use of SES, how, you know, and all of that. So, I think the solution was just spell it out each time, so there's no,
And it's already a defined term because it's all caps.
Right.
If it were undefined, it wouldn't be.
Right.
right. So I would just strike that, I think that's a good point, I'd just strike the SES. At a certain point, we were using it, and that's why it's still in there.
So you're striking right after it says solar energy system, you know, at the very.
On the top,
yes.
and also in D,
Yeah,
D or
since
E.
we never use it.
Yeah. John, I realize I missed one other suggestion
Okay.
that I had in D, the tracking solar energy system. I would strike that last sentence about the 70% of the total panel area, because that's in,
Exactly, well, okay, I was gonna get
You
to
were
that.
gonna get there?
Yeah,
Okay,
but
sorry.
I agree with you 100%.
Alright.
So we decided with B and C, we're just gonna repeat that at the bottom, at the end of C, right?
you could, yes.
Is that what we decided?
Yep.
the system may be composed of one or several.
Yeah, rather, we were talking about putting it up at the top, and now we're putting it in each place,
Okay,
right?
yes.
Okay. All right, I got really kind of confused. I mean, I knew what we were saying, but I got really confused with D, E, and F. So why not just take what we're saying about the footprint in F and say, to what you were getting at, Rich, the footprint shall be computed as 70% of the total surface area of the solar collectors, you know, basically what we have in F,
Yes.
because we don't really need F. We're already defining, we have a tracking solar system,
Mhm.
and then it strikes me that E should be a fixed, oh, here we use that, you put in SES. But here we should say fixed solar energy system, and then for consistency, and then the footprint, blah, blah, blah. As defined. So are people following what I'm saying?
So are you saying in D, we're gonna strike the footprint shall be comprised of?
No, well, we would add to it, the footprint shall be, well, it says computed as 70% of the total, and then add what's down in F.
It seems to me if you just strike that last sentence in D and move F up to the end of D, and get rid of F completely.
Yeah, I would get rid of F completely, that's what I'm
Just move that text up to D.
But we don't need to, the footprint of the, we don't need this part, the footprint of the ground-mounted tracking solar energy system, because we already have, we have tracking.
So you just say
solar.
the footprint shall be determined.
The footprint shall be, as 70%, and then the rest of the language from F.
All right.
And then my question is do we want to say computed, or comprised, or is 70%? I don't know.
I like the wording in F, that shall be determined to be 70%.
Or shall be
Yep, I like
determined,
that better too.
okay.
But I guess I'm kind of objecting a little bit to why we're eliminating E and putting the footprint up, in D, because then it seems like, well, then. if
Well, we're
doing
not
that-
eliminating E, we're eliminating F.
Yeah, so why wouldn't F also be consistent with footprints? Why are we talking about SES footprint on E, and then we have a footprint for ground-mounted ones separately in the ground-mounted?
I think the idea is that the,
paragraph?
D is talking about tracking systems, which are kind of their own little thing, and then E probably needs a little bit of tweaking
Well,
to say that it's a ground-mounted fixed system, not a tracking
Right.
system.
it should, right, D, it says tracking solar energy system.
Right.
E should, I think, should say fixed solar energy system, the footprint, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
So when I wrote this, I said roof mounted, small, large, tracking. And then I said the footprint of any of the fixed ones is thus and such, and the footprint of the tracking is thus and such. And I constructed it that way, so that you say, oh, there's this kind of thing, yep, that's, and as you read through, you say, yes, these are different, and then, oh, there's a description of footprint for the fixed ones, and there's a description of tracking, footprint for the tracking, and it's pretty orderly. And, because the first three are fixed, roof, small and large are fixed. And maybe if we want to say, I don't know, I think we're getting how many angels can dance on this side of the pit.
Well, I just don't see any reason, or what you're talking about is keeping F.
I wrote it that way.
I just don't see any reason for F when it's repeating what it's covering is,
Well, right, we should, my inclination would be to strike the last sentence of D, the tracking, system, to strike that whole 70%, because it's covered in
Yeah.
F.
I tend to think so too, just because it also, we're not creating a book here on each, or, we're minimizing the length of each of these paragraphs, so they're kind of in smaller bite-sized pieces as opposed to having lots of information.
I can live with that, if that's
Yeah,
the
get rid
preference.
of it someplace, it could be either place.
Yeah, all right, so
If we're
then,
gonna keep F, we should get rid of the words ground mounted in F, because that's redundant to the definition that's contained in D.
Yes, I agree.
okay. Hold on. Right, okay, thanks. So the footprint of a tracking solar energy system shall be determined to be 70% of the total surface area of the solar collectors, and we're taking out the footprint shall be comprised in D.
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay, and just to confirm, in E, the title will be Fixed Solar Energy System.
Actually, I'd be okay if in E, it just started out the footprint of a ground-mounted fixed solar energy system.
Well, I think we have titles on everything except F.
Ah.
Yeah, so you could just spell out that.
Yeah,
abbreviation.
fixed solar energy system, and then the footprint. And, you know, F is the only one that doesn't have a title.
And that should be tracking solar energy system footprint or something. along those lines.
I personally would tell you to take it out of there completely,
What, F?
E and F.
You mean the titles out?
Remove them completely from this section.
Remove what?
The two definitions, the two E and F, just take that text out of there completely.
And where would you put it?
I would put it under 514 building footprint.
Oh.
We have a section of the zoning ordinance. that-
Yeah, except then, well, these are definitions, right, so they're not
Right.
gonna be,
You're
Well, okay.
putting a requirement in a definition.
it just means people are gonna have to,
Well, that's why I had originally suggested having a whole section on,
that's what, I was in favor of that too, I got
but that was voted down, but
I
it-
got
it's
voted
going to,
down.
you know, those are not really definitions. And if you look in
Okay.
the definition, there's so many things in the definitions now that are requirements that it makes it very hard for people to follow. So I would take those out completely, put them under 514.
All right, well, I mean,
Because I think the issue there is, while we're considering them structures, most people are not thinking of them as buildings.
Right, well, that may be a need to change 514 to take out building, instead of say 514 building footprint, just take out building and say 514 footprint.
all right, well, why don't we have this as, we're missing two members tonight? So I don't think what we determine tonight is gonna be final, but, so, the handling of this issue is, let's leave that to,
I will just put it in the minutes as it was suggested.
right,
And, you know, if we do that, I guess I'd want a clue in the definitions to say the footprints are defined elsewhere.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it bothers me to cut this up into a lot of pieces.
Well, that's the way the zoning ordinance is written.
Yeah, except, well, you and I agree that this should, I mean, ideally have its own section, like, you know, the other articles and everything on one page. But that was not the will of the majority, so. All right,
Before we move on, can
Yeah.
I make a suggestion with respect to the initial definition of solar energy system?
please.
It troubles me that we're saying storing the sun's radiant energy. The battery on my solar system isn't storing radiant energy, it's storing electricity. So I would suggest that we add something to the, like, if we added to the end, we say, a feature or structure that relies upon sunshine as an energy source and is capable of collecting, distributing, and or storing the sun's radiant energy and or electrical power derived therefrom.
Well, let's narrow, I mean, we're just getting so wordy, can't we just say storing
solar energy.
storing solar energy?
Well, it's not really solar energy, it's electricity. It's electrical power, but
Storing electricity. What did we just say, and distributing? Okay, so here's
I would just say energy, storing energy, I would get rid of,
the sun.
only, again, as technology develops, maybe the batteries will, you know, you have some other type of storage that is not, you know, electricity.
So,
And what about the old-fashioned water
Yeah.
panels.
Right.
Yeah, they have those, they also have
They're stored-
flywheel systems that are used to store
So
power.
just take out the sun's, and just say storing energy,
Yep.
and then it's,
Yeah,
get rid of
I'm
all the
good with that.
wordiness.
Yep.
Yeah, good catch, David.
Can I ask a
Please.
sort of weird, so you've got definitions for all these different pieces, and it sort of assumes that people are gonna have like this, or this, or this. What if I have a roof mounted system and a tracker,
You mean, oh, you had them both?
both?
Well, the
And
roof
then I
mount,
decide I need to have some panels. I mean,
well, the roof, correct me when I'm wrong, David.
Yep.
The roof
The
one
roof
doesn't,
is
is fine,
set.
but you know, you're talking about, 2,000 square feet,
Yeah,
but that's for a fixed ground mounted. What if I have a couple ground mounted panels and I add a tracker? You know,
Then
what,
that's actually your 2,000, it's, anything that's ground mounted is going to be,
because so it's
I-
the total
Yeah.
of the ground
yeah,
mounted
ground
fixed
mounted could
and
be
tracker.
fixed or,
Or
Yep.
track.
or tracked.
I'm just, you know, like throwing
Sure,
out
yep.
where
Good.
people could,
Get confused.
So
and
we're
evolve,
s-
things that evolve over time.
So we're saying that you could have 2,000 feet of panels, rack mounted panels and a tracker?
no, you would have for a rack mounted system and a tracker that total
Yes.
2,000 square feet.
That's right.
Your rack mounted system, we're gonna measure it from the drip edge, your
Right.
tracker, we're gonna measure
Okay.
it at 70%, and
Yep.
that has to be under 2,000.
So ground mounted means either, you could have a combination or all one or all the other, but your 2,000 is your upper limit.
And again, that's where I think if you put this under footprint, the definitions of those requirements, then, you know, you can, say any type of ground mounted system, 2,000 is small, anything 2,000 to 20,000 is large. And then you can also include the two-way, how it's being measured. And you would take out that, again, you have in your definitions requirements.
Well, you know, maybe when we have the full group here, we can revisit whether we wanna put it all in one place or whether we wanna break it up like this. But you'll put this in the minutes so
Yep.
that we have a jumping off point
Yep.
for next time's discussion. All right, so that we'll finalize, I would hope to finalize things next time. And on part D, we're taking out the abbreviation of SES. And I had one question in I. Roof-mounted solar energy systems are not considered to be individual structures. Do we mean individual, or is it separate, or what are we trying to say?
I accept separate.
Yeah, I would think a separate is a better
Okay.
word for it.
Okay, separate.
Or I would actually myself like to say it is not a structure. Because when you look at the definitions, there is a definition for structure. And that includes a huge amount of things. And so basically if you're saying it's not one of these, then, you know,
So you would have roof-mounted solar energy systems are not considered to be a structure.
yep, and use a capital S or all capital structure is defined in the ordinance. So that you're basically saying it's not one of these things.
Okay, so is there any downside to that? I mean, are we opening up any other problems?
Well, I wonder, are we opening up a situation where somebody builds not a carport, but just something that's a non-traditional
Mhm.
racking system that sort of looks like a leaky building, but it's really just, for their intents and purposes, it's just something to hold these roof-mounted panels because,
Right.
Well, I
because
mean,
they're able to
like
be
a
roof,
carport.
they're able to be roof-mounted.
Yeah, so wouldn't that open up that
I
little?
would consider that a structure, the underlying,
Okay,
underlying structure, you know, it's,
so say somebody just put up, 4 posts and then, connects the 4 posts all around. They have like no essentially no lock coverage there because it's hardly anything.
right.
And then they put up, a solar system on top of that, and they say, this is not a structure, this does not count as footprint.
But it would count, the solar panels, then I would say it's a ground-mounted solar system. And fixed.
Right. I mean, and if they screwed it to the side of their house and like a carport, I mean, I think that.
Yep, then
And
it's,
they park
your,
their car under it.
and your definition says if it modifies the structure, then you add to the structure, so.
Okay, well, it says that then the resulting structure must conform to the dimensional controls of the area. All right.
So, I think as long as, if you just take out individual and just say structure, and so that it's referencing the term
Okay.
structure.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So roof-mounted solar energy systems are not considered
To
to
be
be
a
a
structure.
structure. With capital S. Okay.
Okay, anybody else got anything on D?
Yes.
Okay.
In 3,
D3, yeah?
shall not be located in the area between the public road and the front of any building on the lot.
Yeah.
What if the public road goes up the side of your building? Think of where Baker Hill Road hits Dorchester Road. You got a public road going right up the side in what is, the Lyme Center
This
District.
applies only to the Lyme
This is only the
Common
Lyme Common District
Lyme
and the
District.
Lyme
Well,
Center District.
Lyme
Right,
Center
Baker-
District, Baker
Yeah,
Hill
Baker
Road.
that's
Hill
in
Road,
there.
Dorchester is in line center
Okay,
district.
okay, sorry.
So, I mean, I think we talked about, if you have a corner lot, you've got 2 front.
Do you
Yards.
call them the front in the zoning?
There's really nothing in the zoning that talks about that area. There is road setback, but that's not, that doesn't fully describe this. So,
I was just tripping up on the word
Yeah,
front.
it's a good point. I think it was Vicky last time was saying that essentially we're relating it to frontage on a road.
right, but I think, I agree with you, the front is not
Not a good word.
right, because and the board's gone back and forth, you talked about face.
Right.
All right, so we're gonna have to,
But that, I think the other, yeah, that, it's,
well, it sounds like it's something we're gonna have to refine.
yeah, I think so, just to,
All right, so put a star next to that. Thank you, Hebe. Anything else on D? Yeah, we've been bouncing around on that front thing. We're gonna have to commit to stuff next time and just get this done.
it could be something to the effect of, the side of the building facing the road.
Yeah, exactly. Well, why don't I even write that down? And-
You guys, you all probably talked about this at one of the meetings that I missed, but we have definitions here that just leave off anything above 20,000 square feet. So what does that do to someone who wants to do a 30,000 square foot solar installation?
Not allowed.
You can't do it.
Merely because it's not addressed here, it doesn't,
No, because the thinking was that it wouldn't be allowed.
if that's the case, which is, I'm okay,
Yeah.
I don't object to, but we ought to say that.
Well, it's pretty clear, since we say that 20,000 is, shown as the maximum.
No, I would, well,
Okay.
it seems
well,
to me
go
it isn't
ahead.
clear.
Give me the
Seems to
lawyerly thing.
We've defined a small system, we've defined a large system, and then systems larger than 20,000 feet are just not addressed at all.
But then we can say that the systems larger than 20,000 feet are not allowed.
Not permitted,
Be
yeah,
a
that,
perfect place in 514.
Okay.
You're winning
I'm
me
getting
over,
the
David.
514.
I don't know where it goes,
Right,
but.
for the
But just,
time.
that talks about footprint. It's-
All right, but we will add language somewhere.
I thought the intention was to deal with commercial size installations in a separate,
Well,
Isn't
that's
that
not
what-
my recollection. My recollection is that we determined that 20,000 was a pretty good sized system, especially because of how we're measuring it. And they can be take up quite a good amount of acreage. So that's what my correction was.
I was just remembering the discussion around the questionnaire that you circulated with saying this was talking about residential solar, and that commercial solar was gonna have a whole nother thing because,
I don't recall that.
Yeah, I thought it was in the
I-
questionnaire that they, saying that 20,000 square feet was the absolute maximum that would be allowed.
I think I have it here somewhere, I can take a look. What we determined at a certain point was we were not going to address use, commercial or non-commercial. We were gonna just simply address dimensions. But I can look in. So, large solar energy systems, we don't address, I don't believe we address commercial in the questionnaire.
no, I mean the discussion about the sizing of things.
Yeah, we say large, in the questionnaire, we said large SES are defined as panel area greater than 2,000 and less than 20,000. The category is intended to cover large group net meter projects and possible commercial applications that could provide up to 400 kW of capacity. So we're not dealing with use directly, we're dealing with size. For context, 400 kW system might take up as much as an acre of land, about half the size of the town common, and so forth, so on.
So, my sense is, I'm not anxious to spend too much time on bigger than large solar arrays.
No.
Because I don't know if anybody wants to do it. If somebody came to us and fervently said,
Yeah,
this is my big chance, I really wanna do that, I think we'd be open to saying, okay, well, what constraints?
I think this is a good start. I mean, you can have an acre, take up an acre of land, and if we find that we need to address it, that's something we can address later.
David, what is a general procedure, if we have an ordinance like this that sets up these things and says this is permitted and this is not, if someone wants to get a variance from that, is there an avenue that they can get a variance from a?
There is an avenue for variance. There are 5 criteria for a variance, the largest one being showing hardship. And I'm not sure that you could show hardship.
Well,
But
I mean, all 5 are pretty,
esoteric.
yeah, but, I mean, you have to show that,
And who makes that
the
determination?
variance will not be,
The zoning board of adjustment.
the variance, this is page 58, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The spirit of the ordinance observes substantial justice is done the values of surrounding properties not diminished, and literal enforcement of the provision of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship.
So somebody could come in and say, I wanna do a 30,000 foot, or somebody could come in and say, the system I wanna put on my property is 22 feet high, not
Right.
21.6,
Right.
21.6.
I think they might have a better chance with 22 feet high than with, I mean, somebody could come to town and say, I wanna build a skyscraper. But then they have to show that there's a significant hardship that they can't build a skyscraper.
I mean, I don't have a dog in this fight, I'm not gonna build anything like this, but.
I'm happy to hear that.
I just, it occurs to me that if something like that were to be presented, this town is pretty pro-solar. People might actually wanna have an avenue for people
I
to be
think
able to do
in that case, we didn't get feedback from the questionnaire saying, nobody said, I don't think anybody said,
Yeah.
I want bigger.
I'm aching to.
Yeah, I want 5 acres of property covered by solar panels. People didn't say that.
Okay.
My biggest sense is people just want the least hassle so that they can get their systems in. And that there's a provision for, reasonably bigger arrays so that they can have net metering and other arrangements. Okay, so we're gonna add, solar energy systems larger than 20,000 square feet are not allowed, just for clarification. All right, so we made it all the way to the conditional use thing. So I have a bunch of questions on that, but again, if somebody else would like to go first, that would be great.
Before you hit that, can I make another suggestion?
Only if it has nothing to do with 5.14.
It does not. It has to do with the 450s. In the ordinance, there are a bunch of areas where it talks about the reasoning why some of these rules are here. And I didn't know if you wanted to add somewhere in there a place where it would talk about, there's stuff that talks about forestry and timber harvesting, agricultural use.
It went 450?
450, 451, 452.
How is that language useful to you?
That language is useful to me and the zoning board for when they are making a decision. They have something to look at and see, why is this being enacted? Why are there restrictions? What is the purpose of having these rules?
So we can add a purpose.
Yeah. It's like going back to a few years ago, where is the conservation districts. But it just,
Well, the conservation districts have objectives.
Right.
It gives the zoning board direction and some teeth.
right.
So we're doing this because the objective or purpose is this, and,
And, to say that, solar energy is, basically you're promoting it, saying, why is it good? And putting some sort of, again, looking at the agricultural use or wildlife habitat, it gives some,
So things you would put in this would be, the intent of the solar energy system, part of the ordinance is to promote solar energy systems, and that, say, I'm not quite sure how to say it, but that it's to promote it. And then that gives the zoning board specifically some guidance to say, yeah, they wanna be 21.5 feet high.
well, I
and so-
think what that would, we could have something like, is to promote energy production within the town roughly, and with sensitivity to the constraints of the town.
And to, you know, it's also a good place to talk about, that, you know, there is a trade-off between solar energy and cutting down all the trees.
Right, that's what I mean within the
Right,
constraints
so
of,
that, you know, it's, when the zoning board is looking at somebody says, I want a variance because I wanna go larger than 20,000 square feet.
and then they can look here
You
and
say,
say,
okay, the
part of
intent
part
of
of the
this.
purpose is to respect
Right,
the, you know, A, B, and C of the town.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And so it gives the zoning board something to go back and,
It's a good point. Boy, you know, I thought we were gonna polish this thing off tonight, this first 2 pages, but ever the disappointed optimist.
Right, and I think, tell me if I'm wrong, that also would be someplace to imply in the language that if somebody does want something to be 21.5 feet tall, it's like, fine. If it's like otherwise unobjectionable, just give them the variance because
Well,
it's,
no, we can't,
I mean,
we can't say that.
well, the language can say we want to
You mean,
promote it.
it indicates to the zoning board that they have the
That
flexibility.
they have
Well,
flexibility, yes.
they have the flexibility, we don't need to tell them that.
well, you know, there's, again, saying, if you put in it that, you know, you're trying to promote energy production for individuals.
Yeah,
You know, and so there's new technologies a little higher, the zoning board can look and say, well,
Yeah.
this is still meeting the requirements of the ordinance.
yeah, again, I think that we're gonna get lost in the weeds because there's no end to this. We discussed that this is probably optimistically good for 5 years. We're gonna, I mean, not, God forbid me, but the planning board is going to be dealing with this, I think, on a continual basis as this is not gonna be a static amendment remotely. There's no way we can foresee, you know, too far ahead, and if we try to look that far ahead, we're just gonna trip ourselves up. That's my take. But anyway, so we'll, everybody can try and come up with a purpose. Should be doable. So let's go to the conditional use, just to get away from page 1 and 2.
So you're talking about, handwritten
Tim's
one,
handwritten
Tim wrote.
thing. I'll just say to start, that we talked about abandonment and getting language for abandonment.
Something, go back to, if you talk about that, take a look at section 444.
Or 44.
Page 22.
Thank you. All right, 440 for abandoned structures. Yeah, I don't think that's good enough.
Right, but the reason I point that out is you wanna make sure that you're not creating a conflict.
Well, that's why I'm going to precedent. On the the town's small wind energy system ordinance, in section 5, there's a whole section on abandonment. It would have to be slightly altered because this is for small wind energy systems. We would just need to replace it for large solar energy systems. But essentially, the owner of the large SES would be required to notify the town of discontinuance or abandonment, and then have 90 days to physically remove whatever's there, and then restoration, which we already addressed, but could go into this section. And then in the next two numbers, it talks about If the applicant fails to give notice, the system shall be considered abandoned or discontinued if it's out of service for a continuous 12-month period. And then everything that follows from there. Since we have this and it involves an energy system, I think it might be a good idea to basically use it again.
So is that in a separate ordinance or?
You know, this is one thing, I'd like to get all of the sections of the ordinance together. This is always someplace else, I can never find it.
Because there's also a telecommunications
Yeah,
ordinance that is.
yeah.
Yeah, that's also,
Yeah.
those were all created separately and never included as part of.
Right.
Can we have an amendment, and do we need an amendment to
Yes, you would
incorporate?
have to amend.
Could you put that in the minutes that we would like to have, create an amendment to incorporate all the disparate parts of the zoning ordinance into the zoning ordinance?
So they maybe just become separate articles,
Right.
tacked on the end of the.
Right.
Okay.
That way, people, I mean,
The book is
Unless you-
bigger, but
unless
it's
you-
only one book.
yeah, unless you know about it,
Right.
Well, it's also hard because like you have a floodplain ordinance, that's not a zoning ordinance. It's just a town ordinance that the select board,
yeah, so it's not a zoning ordinance, so we can't do
right,
it.
you can't, but it's, you know, again, if you don't know about it.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I would suggest people reading the small wind energy. Where would people find that, Dave?
I'm going to actually
Good, yes.
send it to everybody.
Okay.
It'll take me a minute to find it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. This is a 6-page document.
Yeah, it's interesting, it doesn't indicate when it was promulgated or
No, apparently that's a secret.
anything.
I do remember it. It was basically handed down by the state, and I'm not sure we made any changes.
There were some, David Roby was the chair of the board at the time.
Well, I guess you could go back and look in the minutes if we changed anything. But regardless, this is an existing part of the town's ordinance, so. And it's an energy system, so that might be a good thing to at least think about. All right, so what else? Oh, and the other question I had, Vicky said that we were talking about a safety clause, and she said there's New Hampshire model language, and I couldn't find anything like that.
Oh, she might have been talking about the New Hampshire SCA model solar zoning ordinance. Let me just look. The New Hampshire Sustainable Energy Association model
There, everyone should
ordinance.
have it, including you.
Okay, great.
So there's language about safety in there?
Let me see if there is. There's a section in there about abandoning and decommissioning. No, I don't.
All right, well, we'll have to ask her when she's back. All right, anybody got anything else in this conditional use section?
I guess my question to the board is where are you gonna put it?
Put what?
Conditional use section.
Well, I don't think we know, but, you know.
You have a separate site plan review regulations.
Well, we have it in the senior housing section. and we didn't put it in a separate place there.
Yeah. But you don't have a separate solar energy.
Yeah, I mean, I really would like to see a separate solar energy section.
I agree with you.
So maybe we can discuss, I think it should just be,
And everything's together.
everything together. We've got it in Article 11,
You don't.
in Article
do you?
12.
I was arguing for it and I lost.
Who was arguing against it?
I guess the people who are not here.
Well, that's perfect, then we should just.
I mean, I think in the
Well,
last
how
meeting,
how do you two feel about it? Would you like it all in one section?
I mean, you can't have
I
it-
think it was because, as I recall, people wanted it to be under the accessory use thing, which I understand why that's a good thing. But if we say it's an accessory use in its own section, you know.
I mean, I think for consistency, the thought was we might title it 12.20, conditional use, some, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that would work, but,
Seeing that the senior housing is going away next year,
Well-
you don't have to worry about that.
yeah, well, we're gonna get to that in a minute. So, anyway, when we did this, we put it all together, and I think it's a really efficient and understandable way to do it. So, with your support and my support, I would like to bring that up again.
And I,
So what are we talking about when you say have its own?
So here's the
Section.
senior housing section. Here's the criteria, essentially, for the conditional use. And it's all just in one place. People don't have to go hopping around to 514, to the definitions. Everything's here. Oh, except for the definitions of senior.
Right, well, you do have some things in the definitions, and you may have to modify some of the other sections, you know,
Right.
like accessory use, to
Right.
say it is an accessory
Right.
use. But then, for the most part, it is all,
So, from your point of view, would you like it all in one place?
I would absolutely like it all in one place, because I know people get very frustrated
Yeah,
reading this.
I agree.
Definition, or reading through and having to hop around, if you don't know where you're hopping around.
Right.
It can be very frustrating, and I would, get,
Well, the
always
vast
bring up,
majority of people don't know.
but I always bring up the Shoreline Conservation District.
Yeah.
There's a, when you look at, let's see if I'll find that, it talks about, a lot about the setbacks from, or the land near the Connecticut River, that's all fine. But it talks about surface water. And so if you go to the definitions and look up surface water, figure out what that is. Surface water shall include the surface of all water bodies. Okay, great. Well, water bodies shall include all lakes, impoundments, ponds of 1 acre and greater, water courses and wetlands. Well, what's a water course? Any brook, river, stream, except drainage ways carrying temporary runoff from snow melt or storms. Oh, and then wetlands, you have another definition. So to find out just that water bodies, you have 3 other definitions
Yeah.
that you have to go
That's
through
what I would like
and
to.
drill down.
What I would like to avoid.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to avoid.
All
so
right,
the advantage of making it its own article is that, like senior housing, it probably will wind up being a couple pages.
yeah.
And, would, instead of separating the footprint off into 514, would you just
I'd
recommend
put
that
it
it
all in
stay?
one place.
Yep, you could have it all in one place that says,
That's gonna make it much easier too when you've got to update it in 5 or 8 or 10
Exactly,
years.
you
Well,
don't have to
that's-
go jumping around to all these and miss something. It's just cleaner.
Because that's, you know, you write this, and the first thing I do is go through this and say, okay, what sections
Right,
does this
I
apply
remember with
to?
the senior housing, we had to add it to all those little,
Right, and so I have to go back and see where does this affect things, and, you know, make sure we're not
I mean, I'm certainly not
running into
opposed.
conflicts.
okay. And you, Rich?
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Okay, so, okey doke. So, we'll bring that up with Tim and Vicky next time, and if I have time, I'll try to put together at least an outline of how that section would work. I'm not sure it will, but I'll
So what do we, the only thing we have for an example of that is senior housing?
well, and also, affordable housing, but that's a really short. I'd say the better template is Article 13, the senior housing.
Yep.
And it's not the small wind energy systems
Well,
ordinance?
you can look at that, that's another way to handle it.
Yep.
Either one, I mean, I don't know that one's better than the other. The only thing I care about is that it's all in one place.
I think maybe the hope was, we just put a couple of definitions up there.
That was,
A couple of lines in accessory
Exactly.
use, presto change, and we're done.
my recollection was that people were excited about the idea that it's an accessory use, it's gonna be really simple, and then when we got deeper into it, it kept getting more and more complicated. Okay, so anyway, with these conditional use things, did people go through it? Do they have any comments?
And I think,
Sort of nice intellectual parallel to say solar and wind have the same structure for their,
I agree,
Mhm.
I agree.
So, section 1 is not a sentence.
Right,
right, I don't think Tim is proposing this as the language.
No,
Tim
I
is
think-
just
I
going
think
through.
You're trying to get the ideas out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
right.
more of a bullet point list.
Right.
yeah, so we should start making it language. I would say in 3, we should be, or somewhere, when it comes to conditional use, it's only for the large energy systems. And I think that should be stated, that condition, because then people will look at conditional use for solar energy systems and they'll think, well, I need this for my roof, I need this for a small system. So, I mean, in 3, it says ground-mounted systems shall be cited, it should certainly say large ground-mounted systems.
Well, why wouldn't it
I would just say that,
also, what's the harm in having that in there?
Having what in there?
Any ground mounted system?
Because the condition, we decided, we can change our minds, but my understanding is we decided that conditional use, didn't we?
Oh, it's
Gary?
only going to,
Only for the large,
that having the regulatory,
Right.
you know, to go through for just a small, simple system.
right, so again, then it seems to me like it's repetitive. I mean, you're only doing this if it's a large system, so you don't need to say large ground mounted.
no, I would just say it like at the top.
Conditional use for
Or
large.
the conditional use requirements for large.
For large,
Solar,
yeah.
and then,
And I was a little confused about 4. The visual impact of solar energy systems, associated equipment, and any extensive or imposing perimeter on adjacent parcels. Did he mean, or imposing perimeter fences adjacent to parcel, or on it? I don't know what that means.
So one of the questions, I mean, the whole question of visual impact, do we have language in the ordinance that talks about visual impact.
I'm pretty sure we do, and
It'd be nice to clone
I'm
that.
also sure that in other solar ordinances, there's a visual impact. In fact, in the, I think, yeah, I'll give you an example that we could actually use. Here, on page 4 of the, well, you don't have, most of you don't have it.
Key ordinance?
No, this is section 4 of the small wind energy,
Oh, yeah.
H, page 4. Visual, there's a whole section on visual impacts, with from 1, 2, and 3. And it is inherent that some small wind energy systems may pose some visual impacts due to tower height. The purpose of this section is to reduce the visual impacts without restricting the owner's access to the optimal wind resources on the property.
Document they're working on,
On the wing of the,
the conditional use.
gotcha, thank you.
It's just a handwritten.
So, I think we could follow that as a template. But even, that point aside, does anybody understand what this sentence is saying?
I think, I took it as just notes of things to think about, and if we have language that we've worked through that seems okay, I mean, I'd be really tempted to use it again.
All right, so you wanna just disregard this and use, well, we're still gonna have to come up with criteria. So, I mean, with the visual impacts here, there's they ask for site plan. In one thing, all electrical stuff underground. Buffering, they even have color,
Right, we can't.
and then lighting.
So I guess, going back to your original question, I mean, this sentence, paragraph came out of Keene's visual buffer section.
Okay,
Um,
is this actually the actual wording?
Yeah,
I don't really understand what they're saying.
so I think what they're saying is that if you're putting in if you're putting in fencing, or the owner agrees to provide fencing to a neighbor, there's still, that should be, you should be trying to preserve the existing vegetation.
Okay, I think we could say it more clearly than this, whatever it is that we want to say.
Yeah, perhaps.
So, I see what the word imposing means now, that threw me.
Which one?
The extensive or imposing perimeter fencing. Just, you had a 20-foot perimeter fence, that would be imposing, that would be in your face.
Yeah. All right, and then, again, it came up in the last meeting that the application process would, and correct me if I'm wrong, David Robbins, process would be the same as site plan review, and I'm a little, what does that mean?
What I had written down in the minutes is that you were going to look at it as a starting point.
Okay,
Basically,
okay.
that it's not, because, the site plan review requirements, the application requirements says a parking plan. And I'm not entirely sure that you need unless you're going to, want, you know, for construction vehicles and, you know, have a plan that says you're gonna park your electricians are gonna park their vans here during construction, which there are some places that do require down to that detail, but if you're, you know, it depends on what the board wants. But are you looking for just a site plan for the systems, you know, what's going to be on the lot, where it's going to be located, where you're gonna put fencing, where you're gonna put your panels? And then, so why would you require a parking plan?
We would.
Right, so that's why I said it's a start, because that is one of the requirements. of
Right,
site
so
plan
again,
review.
if we have our own section, we can just,
Right, you can,
we can pick and choose the site plan review.
right. If you look at
items that are
section 10 of the
applicable.
site plan review, that has all the application requirements, and then you can, you know, pick and choose what is appropriate
Exactly.
for, you know, I think, you know, presenting a site plan, perfect, and what has to be on that site plan, you know, location of panels, location of, you know, any trees that you're removing, location of fencing, location of utilities, you know, that are on the lot. You know, what's underground, what's above ground, those types of things. But I think the site plan review application has a lot of things that are not applicable. And so just using it outright is going to cause people a lot of distress when they start reading it and saying, why do I need to do a parking plan for this? Or, you know, why do I need to show a plan that says with all the drainage? I'm not changing anything.
Well, I mean, drainage.
Yeah,
Drainage
if you want
could be,
drainage,
definitely
that's,
be an issue, but we would need to select what's relevant.
right, and that's, so I think, you know, you need to go through the site plan review application process to.
Yeah, you know, this is, I thought we were on the cusp of finishing this thing off, but, and this is what happens every year with amendments. They drag on for so much longer than I would have imagined. So, I'll try and write an outline, and anybody else who's willing to take a stab at it, please do, for a single section.
John, I'm coming back to the Keene, New Hampshire code stuff, and, I mean, the items that we just discussed, you know, about what needs to be on your detailed plans, you know, they've got a section on that. They've got a section on decommissioning and site restoration. You know, they've got their review criteria. I'm wondering if that would be, since it looks like Tim may have used that document, whether maybe that would be a better thing, it's just.
Better thing than,
Then, that if we actually looked at that as a starting point, because I think Tim has leaned off of that, his
okay.
ideas, but as we start getting into more details and saying, oh, we need more details, well, I think there are, a lot of them are in this scheme thing.
Okay, so we should take a look at T.
I mean, I guess being new, I'm just not quite sure what has to be in this new section that we're gonna be writing.
Well, I don't see, we're not starting over. We're just,
No.
we're taking everything and putting it in one
It
place.
wants to get plopped in there.
Um,
And I think, you know, the idea of the application process, just to going to the site plan review, pulling out those things that are pertinent for this type of thing, and then reviewing it against Keene, saying, did Keene find something new and
Sure.
different that,
Yep.
and then that way you're just reusing the same language.
Where is site plan review, what section was that?
That's
That's
separate.
This is second,
Oh, okay.
some booklet.
Yeah.
you look at section 10, is the,
Yeah.
All right, are we done with this? All right.
I don't have anything else to derail.
All right, so when everybody's, yeah, David, David Kahn, do you think you'll be here next time? Is that everybody, you two think you'll be here?
Expect so, yeah.
So I don't know about Vicky, I assume Tim, this was a one-off thing for Tim.
Yeah.
So, let's all work on this next time. I also, wanna go over this bill affecting our senior housing, thing next time. So, everybody should be here to go over that.
What's the issue with the senior housing?
The HB, there was an omnibus bill. Remember when we were doing the senior housing?
Right.
The issue of all other types of housing. So I've been in touch with legislators about this in the past, and it kept getting defeated. This year, it didn't get anywhere, but in the omnibus bill, where they just throw
Right.
bits and pieces of things in, it's in there.
Ah,
So, better than before, because it's just for workforce housing, not all other kinds. But the problem with it, and we checked with our council, is it's so badly written, and I would be amazed if there's not gonna be a lot of litigation relating to this, but the way it's written is only incentives apply, no limitations. And it doesn't apply just to that part of town where you have your senior housing. If you have, this is only, remarkably, only applies to towns that have senior housing ordinances. So if you don't have it, it doesn't affect you at all. But if you have a senior housing ordinance, it means that your incentives and none of the limitations applies to the whole town, anywhere in town. And that's, to my mind, problematic. I could certainly come around to having it apply to the place where we apply the senior housing. So this is something we gotta talk about.
Our next meeting is on the 25th, is that correct?
20,
It is the 11th, so.
11 plus 14.
yep, the 25th.
Anybody got anything else?
Would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
I would not only entertain it, I will execute that entertainment. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn and thank everybody for their attendance. Thank you, Hebe.
Sure.
And is anybody else think they're gonna take a stab at that, or?
Probably not.
I'm willing to type up Tim's handwritten
Oh,
note.
God, no, because we're just gonna go, I think Rich's thing, I think that's make work. Rich's,
It doesn't take long.
all right, I mean,
I'll
because
type it and.
I think what Rich is saying is it's basically taken from the Keene thing, we can just,
Yeah.
could you send that section, do you know how to do that, like just that section to David, to send, or David, could you,
I don't know if I have even the whole thing.
could you send that to David?
I can find it.
To send to all of us,
Yeah,
so-
absolutely.
All right, so why don't we do that, and you don't have to type it
All
out.
right, okay.
I'd rather have
I'll
you,
find something.
I'd rather have you take a stab at the
Are you talking about the Keene ordinance?
Yeah,
I'm highly in favor of stealing language.
well, that's what Tim was doing, it's
Exactly.
just that he wrote it out by
Steal
hand.
tested successful ordinances from other people.
Great, good to hear.
Good.
It's like
And
programmers do.
steal from the best.
Steal shamelessly, share generously.
Yes, and could you circulate, David, could you circulate the, some pointer to that bill?
Yeah, it's,
Thought I had.
I think well, I don't know where
So-
but it is, I'll just read it to you. HB 1661, if the municipality allows an increased density, reduced lot size, expedited approval, or other dimensional or procedural incentive under this section for the development of housing for older persons, as defined, blah, 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 it may allow the same incentive for the development of workforce housing as defined in blah, blah, blah. Beginning July 1st, 2023, a year from now, incentives established for housing for older persons shall be deemed applicable to workforce housing development. And our attorney said, in response to our questions, as I read it, this applies only to incentives that wouldn't trigger the restrictions, and it would apply the incentives to workforce housing anywhere in town, not just in districts where senior housing is permitted. So,
Did Vicky maybe send us something on that?
I didn't get anything.
I may have forwarded Vicky's, I'm trying to,
Oh, yeah, she's the one who notified us, yeah,
Yeah.
she said that
Yeah.
had happened.
Right.
All right, thank you, David.